Well, ladies and gentlemen, it sure as hell would not be another day if LGBTQ people were not complaining about something online. We have an article here from Kotaku with the absolute most ridiculous headline that I have read so far, and I read a lot of them, which says new reports suggest the games industry is failing LGBTQ players, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, because clearly the people who are pandered to 24/7, the people who run the oppression train 24/7, are somehow being failed by the industry that virtue signals to them 24/7.
I don't believe you.
So let's get into this article, guys, from good old terrible Kotaku. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into the YouTube algorithm, guys. We're almost at 31,000 subscribers. It's insane, man. I love what you guys are doing, and I appreciate it so much. So the headline, like I said, read, news reports suggest the games industry is failing LGBTQ players, with a sub-headline that says advocacy group GLAAD has run the numbers, and they're not great. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, GLAAD, the one company who we promise is totally not biased towards LGBTQ people. No way. They're going to give you the facts because they're a company that is totally based on truth. Yeah, of course. Of course they are. And you know what's funny? This article has no issues mentioning different games that have LGBTQ representation, and yet they're trying to say it's not enough. So it says, I've known that, just to be clear, really quick, just to be very clear, the person who wrote this article is also a trans person. Just to be as clear as possible, because of course this is the kind of person that's going to write this article for Kotaku. It says, I've known that the representation in games mattered ever since the day in 1987, which is complete bullshit, because nobody in 1987, including this dude, was ever thinking about representation. That is a modern thing. That is a talking point that is made to validate mentally ill people. That is not something that was around in 1987. But anyway, when I first finished Metroid and discovered the intergalactic bounty hunter Samus Aran was the rarest of things for the time, a cool female video game protagonist, I loved playing as Mario or Link or any intrepid hero, but I was particularly thrilled to see a game say that women can be heroes too. Now, with games a more important cultural force than ever, the influential media advocacy organization GLAAD has released its first ever in-depth report examining how games are doing in terms of LGBTQ representation. The data strongly suggests that on one hand, game play an important role in the lives of many queer players, particularly queer youth, and on the other hand, that games are falling short of in terms of adequately representing and reaching those players. Now, I don't agree with any of this, and I know, shocking, I know, but I don't agree with any of this. This entire thing is a bullshit sentiment. This person never once thought of representation back in the 80s. I don't know how old they were. I imagine they were probably a kid when they were in the 80s, but still, there's no way in hell that they thought about this. Only until now did they think about this when they decided to be a transgender and decided to transition because it was a popular thing to do, and it would allow them to get more jobs and more clout and all this stuff on social media. That's why this person decided to do it later on in their lives. And I think it's funny that he says that he likes to play as Mario or Link, but then all of a sudden, because Samus Aran was discovered to be a female character at the very end of the game, that was suddenly life-changing for him. Like, it's such bullshit. You never thought of this when you were playing Metroid. Never once did you ever think about representation. Never once were you truly so blown away about the fact that she was a female character. Was it shocking? Sure, I'm sure it was shocking, like it was for a lot of people. But let's not pretend that's what made you a female today in the first place. You know what I mean? It says the report released today is packed with interesting and important statistics collected in partnership with the media data and analytics firm Nielsen, and you can see it in its entirety here. Among GLAAD's most striking findings is that 17% of active gamers identify as LGBTQ. Yeah, I wonder, out of that 17%, I want to be very clear, out of that 17%, how many of them are bisexual? How many of them are bisexual? Probably 15%, maybe 14%. I guarantee you it's the highest number out of all of them. Because like I say in all my videos, and like I say in all of my streams, bisexuality is on the rise simply because it is the easiest form of LGBTQ for people to trend on. It is the easiest and laziest form. They can come out and claim to be bisexual. Boom. They get all the LGBTQ virtue signaling points. They get all the clout for being part of the LGBTQ, but they don't actually have to commit to it. They don't actually have to sit there, lay down, and bend over and take a dick in the butt if they're a man, or, eat, muff dive if you're a female. You get what I'm saying? You don't have to fully commit. If you look at all these people who claim to be bisexual, they're almost exclusively always in straight relationships. They're never dating or marrying the same sex, simply because that's not convenient enough, ladies and gentlemen. They want to stick with the easiest way to get their clout. It says, and yet only a paltry 2% of games on major PC and console storefronts, PSN, Steam, Nintendo, etc., are tagged as having LGBTQ content, suggesting that games which actually feature queer characters or storylines remain extremely rare. Now, they specifically say tagged as having LGBTQ content. Tagged. I know of a lot of games that have been released that were never tagged with LGBTQ content that actually had LGBTQ content in it. So that seems to me that these numbers are heavily skewed in the favor of obviously GLAAD. They're trying to use this lack of tagging as a means to try to overall push a narrative of lack of representation, when we all know that's bullshit. Especially now in 2024, just like it was in 2023, you have way too much LGBTQ representation. It's nauseating. People are literally vomiting rainbows at this point. Like we can't turn anywhere without seeing two dudes banging, kissing, or whatever, or vice versa. Like you can't go anywhere without seeing it. So it says, with big and influential games like The Last of Us Part 2 and Apex Legends prominently featuring queer and trans characters, it's perhaps easy to feel like LGBTQ representation in games is more widespread than it actually is, when the reality may be that the industry is still failing short of adequately reflecting the LGBTQ player base. Now, they're also factoring in, ladies and gentlemen, since they're counting Steam, right? That means that they're factoring in indie games, right? So indie games are games made by small developers, studios, or whatever. Maybe not even a studio, maybe just even one person. That person, the last thing that's on their mind is LGBTQ representation. Unless they are purposely trying to make a game that is particularly tailored to gay people, they're not going to be worried about that. They're going to be worried about producing an actual good game, because they don't have the backing of a major studio, so they can't fuck around and find out like a lot of these major studios can, that are willing to lose money for the message. It's just not possible. They need to make sure they put out a game that's as good as possible to give themselves the highest chance of actually becoming profitable and maybe having a successful game on their hands. So the fact is, there is a million different indie games out there that are being factored into these numbers, which are obviously boosting the numbers into the direction that GLAAD wants them to go. It says the data shows that many people who play games are queer, and that games often play a particular important role in their lives. For many of them, in this period when hundreds of pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation are being introduced, games may be something of a safe haven. I would love to know what you would consider anti-LGBTQ legislation, because I guarantee you almost all of it has to do with the protection of children under the age of 18 from body mutilation that is very permanent and very real, that they don't have the fundamental misunderstanding, or fundamental understanding, I should say, to be able to make that decision and have a permanent effect on their bodies. That is what most of these anti-LGBTQ legislations are, but they don't want to tell you that. They want to make sure they try to skew it as much as possible, because this is all about control, ladies and gentlemen. This is all about pushing a message. The more victims that they can get that will partake in the LGBTQ lifestyle as we know it today, not as we knew it before, but as we know it today, especially in the trans ideology, that will allow them to make an ungodly amount of money off of them. It's going to constantly feed big pharma. It's going to constantly feed big surgery. All of that stuff is going to be funded by mentally ill people that were never told that they were mentally ill. They were never told that they were making a bad decision. Everybody just basically enabled them, and that ultimately what leads us to things like this, where apparently all people care about, like Carolyn Petit, is how much a game is gay. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it, and if you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.